Hello, and welcome back to another episode of I'm Free Now What with me, Michelle Fortier, a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Florida. Now, today's topic is a special request from somebody, and they would like me to go over different ways to cope with the chaos that is currently America and the elections. So, in order to go over this, I have a few different ways that we can all deal with everything that is going on and all the anxieties and fears and all this other stuff. So the first thing is to stop with social media. Give yourself a little bit of a time frame in which you're going to engage in social media. Put limits on yourself. Put limits on what they call doomsday scrolling, where you keep looking at all the bad things that are happening in the world. Also, a big recommendation that I have is stop arguing with people on social media. So, politics, believing that your candidate is the chosen one, all this other stuff, it is really something that speaks to people's values and people's morals and all this other stuff. And generally, people's values and morals are not going to be changed by somebody arguing with them on Facebook. It generally does not happen. And then it just leads to a lot of frustration. It leads to a lot of name calling and anger. And then there's also people that go on social media that actually have no political thought or anything like that. They just love to troll. They love to needle people. They love to get them upset. So when you are feeding into social media and all that nonsense, you are just driving yourself nuts while also really not changing any part of the world. The second recommendation that I have is with the news. Limit the amount of news media that you take in. Remember that a lot of the news stations and the newspapers, they are there to get advertisers, right? Because advertisers are what keeps the light on. So that big sensationalist headline that says, civil war imminent, doomsday prophecies. What that just basically is some clickbait for you to go to their website, to go to that article and then read the article. And usually when you go and you read the article, it's a lot different than the headline. So once again, limit the amount of news that you consume. And I always really recommend that you go with, more news stations that are less advertiser based. Some people will call them too liberal though, but I really like NPR. And for an outside perspective, I really like reading BBC News. They tend to, for me, be more fact based and less sensationalism. Generally, their headlines are not like something crazy like China takes over the world, or like civil war breaks out, everybody's going to succeed, there's going to be riots everywhere. Those typically tend to be media sources that are very advertisement based. The next thing that I have found very, very helpful during this election cycle is something, my all-time favorite DBT skill, which is radical acceptance, which means that we just accept that that's the way that it is. These are the things that have happened. These are the outcomes. All this chaos is to be expected. The more that we run from the chaos and demand that it should not be like that, the more unhappiness that we will have. And guess what? Us radically accepting that these are the ways that it should be does not mean that we throw up our hands and say, we don't, that's the end of it. So that's the other thing that we can do. When we start to radically accept that this is the circumstances that we are in, instead of crying, stamping our feet and all that other stuff, we can then take that energy and put it into causes that we actually, can win at, or not even win's not the right word, but that we can actually see a positive outcome out of. So if you are upset that your candidate didn't win and you care about a certain issue, stop crying about the candidate not winning. Instead, go ahead, take that energy and put it into something that you really care about. I could speak for myself. In the past, I've had candidates that have lost, And, I felt sad for a day or two. And then I said, you know what? I need to take this energy and funnel it into something that is actually useful. Because sitting there wasting my tears over something is really not going to change a damn thing in the world. Crying about something really, very rarely does anything but make us miserable. So I took that energy that I had and I put it into causes that I really care about. The finances, any money, I would go and I would donate to causes that I cared about. So that only came about because I radically accepted the situation as it was. So instead of being willful and demanding that the world change to meet me and what I would like and the candidate that I would want to win, I instead said, this is the way that it is. Time to move forward, time to do the things that need to be done to protect the world from the candidate I don't like that got elected. So that's how I've handled losses in the past. And this brings me to the other part. If your candidate won this election, stop with all the celebrating and all that other stuff. Remember empathy. Empathy is a very important thing in this election. It's understanding how bad it feels when your candidate loses. It's about not rubbing it in. It's about being a humble winner. It's about being able to look at the other side of it, the other party that might not have won, and being able to understand and empathize with what that feels like, and not be a petty winner. Stop being petty. We all need to move forward, and that's the other part of this, is remembering that we are America. We are a country based on the Constitution. This is part and parcel of being in America. We have elections. We have elections for president every 4 years. We have this drama every 4 years. This drama this year is a little bit more escalated than most years for a lot of different reasons, but it's generally the same. We always have all this drama related to an election coming about. The other thing that we can do is we can do the DBT skill of wise mind distracts. And wise mind accepts. So the skill that we would use in that skill is comparison. So sometimes I hear people going, this is the worst it's ever been. This is absolutely horrible, blah, 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 blah. And when we have those thoughts or we tell ourselves those things, we become extremely overwhelmed. And when we become extremely overwhelmed, that's when anxiety kicks in and depression kicks in and all this other stuff. The comparison that I find helpful is to remember that the world goes through cycles, and there have absolutely 110% been worse times in history. And so I like to be reminded of that. I also like to remember our connectedness to everything, and that just because there's this one little dot in history doesn't mean that everything else is out the window. And there's the aspect of also where I like to compare our election process, even though it's messy, even though it can be difficult, all this other stuff, it's still worlds above a lot of other places around this world. And I'm always thankful that I get to live in a country where we do have elections. And despite all the back and forth and my candidate that I support not always winning and the drama that comes about when other people's candidates don't win, I recognize how lucky I am to live in the United States of America. With all its faults, with everything that's going on, I still understand and I still really appreciate living in this country. So I hope that this little video about how to deal with the election was helpful. If it was, please let me know. If it wasn't, or you feel like something was left out, go ahead and leave a comment underneath. I always believe that the best way to learn is from other people and what their experiences have been, what their successes and what their negative things have been, so that way we can learn. So if you found it helpful, please go ahead and share. And I will always wish everybody good mental health and continuing freedom. Take care.